Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Black Atlantic. We missed you. It's been a couple weeks, but
Yeah.
it's Clinton and Hillary back to rock the show.
Back to rock the show. Before we get into a jam-packed episodes of topics, which we've not done in a bit, we've had guest after guest. We're here to start with our land acknowledgement. So I would like to acknowledge that I am recording from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and that Toronto is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And I would like to also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands.
All right, perfect. And me, with my little guy that just walked in the room here,
Perfect timing.
would like to acknowledge that I'm recording on the traditional unceded territory of the Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Pescatomakati peoples, a territory covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which these nations first signed with the British Crown in 1726.
Now, this week, we're going to get into the BBI Legacy of Excellence Awards. I was nominated as Youth Entrepreneur of the Year, but Clinton got to go on my behalf. So, we're going to talk a bit about that. We're going to talk about the Fredericton Anti-Racism Task Force and some of the new mandates that they are trying to put in place. CBC has a community advisory board in Nova Scotia of Black people to help them with their media, which I think is kick-ass. And we're going to be talking about. And I got to go to a movie premiere about racism, but not about racism. And I'm so excited to talk about that further. Yay.
That sounds amazing. I don't think the video intro is here anymore. It seems to be gone. So
I have, wait a minute. Hold on. Okay. Cool music. Do, and we're back.
yeah.
Wait. Oh no, that's gone.
No, I was trying to upload them while you were doing stuff. That's all right. Let's get into it.
Let's just get into the episode. You know what we sound like, everyone. What's good?
Exactly. So Hillary was amazingly and deservingly nominated for Young Entrepreneur of the Year in Atlantic Canada by the BBI, which was the Black Business Initiative. And, I know that she was nominated by one of our listeners. So a huge shout out to you. You know who you are. Thank you so much for the support. It means the world. There were other people nominated as well. Some of guests that we've had on in the past, Fair and Family Farms, as well as Paul, Akeem, and Jessica from Queens and Kings Moving. So Hillary couldn't make it out. So I decided to roll up to Halifax for my first ever BBI Awards. And it was pretty cool. Black tie event held at the Marriott downtown. And, it was a room full of about 200 pretty interesting people. Some great keynote speakers. I don't remember the exact names of them all. I'm so sorry. But my experience was that, I really enjoyed the intro music where like a band came out, like not a steel drum band, but a festival, like a Caravana type band came out and played for a while. Got to know a little bit about all the different nominees and such. But I just met a lot of great people. There were some more senior people there, but at the table I sat at, I mean, I met a musician, the owner of a marketing and communications company, someone who works in international banking, another person that worked in international development. I met a Black lobbyist from Ottawa who's, and if you don't know what a lobbyist, it's a really interesting job. I mean, their job is, I guess, not only on behalf of like oil and mineral companies, but to lobby the government on behalf of companies to try to get their interests met. So is there some gray in that? Maybe, but it is how politics in the world works, and really interesting people. Actually, there was a member of parliament who sat down beside me for a little while, a gentleman named Andy Fillmore. I didn't chat with him much. I think he felt quite uncomfortable being around me because my partner was wearing all the Palestinian colors, and I did a quick Google search on the gentleman, and there were a lot of complaints um, towards his office regarding just like completely ignoring all the calls coming in.
Can I ask,
But
what is this person white or black, but maybe just silent?
you know, definitely, I don't know. I mean, pretty
Okay,
light skin. No, I mean it could be falling under the category of like racially ambiguous, or maybe there
fair
was
enough.
a degree of black. I don't want to assume because I don't know. I mean, he also could have been. Um, there definitely could have been some African ancestry in those genetics, but I don't know.
Fair
But
enough.
the point is, there were a lot of entrepreneurs there, a lot of passionate people, and like we talk about, people like there were people there that your general New Brunswicker doesn't see on a daily basis. Like black PhDs, black doctorates, black lawyers, black doctors. I mean, and just it was a great event with everyone in suits, and yeah, I learned a lot more about the BBI. It's an organization that's been around in Nova Scotia for 25 years, and they're trying to expand out to Atlantic Canada. And it was really great to see New Brunswick represented there, and I hope to we continue to work with, like, we know them, they know us a bit. Hope to continue to work with them in the future. But
Yeah, I mean, I was honored to be nominated. I will say, half jokingly, half not, that like my dad was like, "When's the cutoff for youth?" And my stepmom in the family
mm,
chat was like maybe 30.
it's
But
30
I also
usually. Yeah,
I hope it's 30. And I will say, I don't live in the Atlantic anymore, and so not that I feel like I was sort of disqualified from the start, but I am happy to see it going to people. One, people that we have talked about on the show who are doing so much change. But to the person who did win, it was an honor to be nominated, especially considering that I've interviewed several people at BBI. It was very, very nice. To be further connected with them. And yeah, I'm happy that they know the work that we're doing, and that hopefully we'll be able to foster more partnerships down the line. I will use this as a moment to plug that at some point this week, I will be airing a segment on CBC about the fact that they're expanding their services to French services for Black entrepreneurs. So, yay, French Black entrepreneurs getting that BBI support. But I'm happy you were able to go and connect and meet people, and you looked very spiffy, and Sally looked wonderful. And I
it did.
was so happy to see you guys out there while I was doing red carpet interviews at the Canadian Foundation of AIDS
Oh,
Research Gala.
speaking about
And we
looking
raised
wonderful, yes.
no, that was not why I wanted that segue, but thank you. That gown was custom made only an hour before. As you were telling me I wasn't winning, it was in the final stitches
Getting
of
fitted.
being done. It was very hectic, and we ended up raising $1.4 million to eradicate AIDS, or eradicate new cases of AIDS in Canada. We were very close, but it continues to disproportionately affect Indigenous and Black communities. So a lot of my interviews centered around that, and the fact that new cases of HIV and AIDS are still majority poorer, queer, Black, and Indigenous communities. So it was nice to be supporting a cause while you were also supporting a cause, and we were just there being good people. But thank you for going.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's like real the pure lady in red style dress. It looked great on you. You looked great.
Well,
Um
the theme
and
was Moulin Rouge, so I was trying to go for
oh,
like cabaret. The guest performer was Maya, who sang in Lady Marmalade with Christina Aguilera and Pink,
absolutely.
who also sang Ghetto Superstar.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, she was the guest of honor, so I tried to evoke that energy, and I was very happy in that dress. So yeah, thanks.
Cool. And I won't list all the winners from the BBI event, but yeah, so the one person that did win Young Entrepreneur of the Year was Shanice Jones of the Behavioral Connections Consulting Services. So it's an evidence based program that is effective for helping neurodiverse children and adults, and can be generalized in a variety of different ways. So, again, just an example of amazing work being done by Black people, and just like to break down the stereotypes. We're in all industries and helping in all kinds of ways. So, congrats to her. And we've also had, like, not to get it, well, we're going to be in it. we are in one, and we're going to be in another magazine in the near future. So
Yes.
that's pretty cool. Do you want to talk quickly about Maritime Edit and how that all panned out?
Yeah, so I feel like we sort of teased it if anyone saw the episode where we were able to
Yes.
film Tondaway in person at Music New Brunswick, but what was going on right before creating that episode was Tondaway, McCarthy and Gary Weeks were photographing and filming us at Music New Brunswick to be featured in the Maritime Edit. It's something we had loosely discussed earlier in the summer when we ran into them at Summer Solsa, and it just happened to come to fruition in Moncton while we were all there for Music New Brunswick. I'll say that I thought it was an honor to be not only interviewed by Tonaway, but photographed by Gary. I think that the photos are
Mm-hmm.
incredible. You can see them on our Instagram right now, and I'll be posting more throughout the week. I think that the little snapshot about us is very well written. You can purchase the magazine if you want a physical copy for $11.99, or you can look at the digital version and read all about us if somehow you're listening to this but you don't know us or you want to support us, whatever. It's there on Maritime Edit. You can read up about why we're doing this work that we're doing. But it was a great experience. It was hectic in the moment to get all those shots in the middle of another group's conference, and it looks seamless. Went off without a hitch. And thank you to Aaliyah Michaud as well for being such a great assistante extraordinaire and helping us. It kicked ass. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be ordering my copy, that's for sure. I was really happy
I
to be in
ordered
that
2.
magazine.
People are getting some for Christmas. You like me? You wanna read about me? Merry Christmas. Here's content about me. That's what I'm
Here's your
doing.
Christmas gift.
Everyone, I'm
Info
Oprah
about
out here, but
moi.
about myself. You get a copy. You get
You
a
get a copy
copy.
of a book about me. You get a copy of a book about me. You get a copy of
This
a book
Christmas,
about me.
I'm dishing out Hillary.
Nice. Nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, while we're talking about Nova Scotia,
Sure.
you put me onto what actually turned out to be a really interesting development over there in
Mm.
Scotia. Do you want to read about this one or the next one or
Whatever
both?
you want. Is it the CBC Community Advisory Board?
Yes.
Yes, amazing. So there is going to be board members of African Nova Scotians and persons of African descent living in Nova Scotia that will be an advisory board to the CBC in Nova Scotia. It is made of 25 members that are African Nova Scotians, and their perspectives and lived experiences will be integral to telling the complete story of the Black experience in the province. And if you look at the article, as you can see Clinton sharing right now, if you are watching, you can see the faces of the 25 people that make up the advisory. Every 2 months, board members will be meeting with a team of CBC journalists to provide advice with specific reporting projects and long-term editorial outlooks, offer general feedback on CBC content, and the members may also form smaller boards for specific coverage and needs, and serve as a sounding board during breaking news events. The board is not a decision-making body and won't oversee editorial decisions, but it's an opportunity to share valuable perspectives and insight for consideration by CBC Nova Scotia's team. And then it lists the 25 members on the board there, which I feel like, did I recognize names? I'm scanning quickly and I don't right now, but I thought that I may have. But then it provides a list of the 25 people on the board, which selfishly I want to say thank you for giving us a list of cool Nova Scotians that we can interview, because we are always looking for people not in New Brunswick, which is where we are sort of based, to interview. So I'm pumped to learn about 25 new African or African descendant Nova Scotians that we can talk to. But yeah, Clinton, what are your thoughts?
Well, I approached this with hesitation when you first told me about it, kind of rolling my eyes a little bit, being like, oh boy, is this another kind of like virtue signaling,
Mm.
fluffy, just piece to, make it seem like there's some kind of an effort being made, and will they actually be listened to, and will there be any progress? But then, I read, and I recommend to anyone who's curious, because the 25 people are here, just to Google CBC Nova Scotia's Community Advisory Board, and you'll find this list yourself with 25 easy to click links. But you're right, the names seem really familiar because I think, just like New Brunswick, there's a lot of common names
Mhm.
that are used here, like Sparks for one. Like I know Kaya Sparks from CBC, and then Eddie Carvery, Carvery. I think his great grandfather was famous, and then there's Provo, and I think it's Dwayne Provo who is maybe the president of or whatever the
He's the head of the Department of
of
African
African, yeah.
something. He's the advisory to the white guy. We talked about it twice on this show.
And Shakara Grant, I think she is a business owner that we've come across in grant applications. Point is, as I scrolled through and read about all these people, it's actually quite a diverse panel of a diverse board of people from multiple disciplines in life. And, they just don't seem to me to be just kind of like token bodies put into a position to kind of just fill a spot and not work for change. But we have immigrants from Nigeria, South Africa, as well as maybe Somalia, photographers, poets, but also doctors. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm scrolling along, people who work in things that have to do with land trust, as well as eighth generation Nova Scotians, people who work in television and radio, um, people who are social workers. So Eddie Carvery is the descendant of renowned civil rights activist Eddie Carvery from, I think he's a famous figure. Um, People involved in law. I mean, like they really, I feel like, I don't know how they came across this board, and I won't read everyone's sort of profession, but it's incredibly diverse. It's very representative of trying to like span across what I talk about often, the diversity of what Black is. You've got
Um,
people.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out
It's fine.
Eddie Carvery is the co-host and co-creator of the podcast Africville Forever.
Africville
That's why
forever.
we
Okay,
know that name. That's why
that
we know
is
the
why.
name. Keep going.
No, that's okay. I mean, we've got a filmmaker, people who are heavily involved in the community. I believe Lisa Dennis, she works at a rehabilitation center. I mean, you've got all walks of life covered here. Another doctor. Uh,
Mhm.
and these, I mean, I'm judging a book by its cover here, but just looking at the kind of aura they carry with themselves in the photos, they look like people with powerful voices who are actually going to make change. Now, as you read, I mean, these people don't have voting power. Reporters are hopefully going to listen to their consultation. Steve Barry, deputy mayor of Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, and like other stories we follow, we should just try to follow this and
Mhm.
see if there's any change in Nova Scotia. Yeah, I really feel, again, going back to the event I went to, um, that I just understand Halifax and Nova Scotia a little bit better just from being around so many
Right.
notable people who were there in one place for a common reason. I think I think Nova Scotia has definitely had a head start in fighting for more racial problems probably, but fighting for like Black equality and equity and voices being heard. And I hope this could be a blueprint for other provinces to follow, or at least in
Yeah.
Atlantic Canada.
I
What do you think
definitely
about it?
think I definitely think that something we've talked about quite a bit is obviously trying to balance um being part of the diversity on CBC because unlike the people that I think are going to be on this board, we're actively creating content that is for hopefully a Black audience on
Hmm.
CBC. And these people are going to be directing the content. And I think that I don't think it's bad to admit that we've tried to have some things spoken about, discussed, curated that have not always been approved that I think are important to us and that we feel are important to our community. And the benefit of us running our own podcast is that when we decide something's important, we just do it. I'd like to think that maybe 25 people, Black African descent, whatever, coming together to decide on a news topic being important or relevant, or the way a breaking news issue should or shouldn't be discussed might
Hmm.
have more impact than not that we're just two content creators, but I would like to think maybe there is power in numbers when those types of issues come along. I also think it's great that this is happening in Nova Scotia, which has like such a long-standing, obviously, history of Black people in its province. And I think that when you think about the Maritimes, we do tend to think of Nova Scotia as the place where there has been more prevalent Black community. And while we've learned a lot about the history of Black people in New Brunswick, I think if it's going to start anywhere, these types of advisory boards, I'm not surprised that it's starting in Nova Scotia. I would love for there to be something like that in New Brunswick and beyond, because I do think it sort of comes back to cultural sensitivity. If you, for some reason, cannot hire enough representation on your actual team, how do you make sure things are culturally reflective, that you are meeting some diversity, equity, and inclusion measurements, that you aren't just having diversity hires, or that you are treating things with all the sensitivities that they deserve? And so I do think at least having this type of board, which does seem to encompass so many, genders, groups of people, walks of life, ages, that hopefully that'll have a more of a round enough view that things are treated in an equitable way. So I hope that they do it in more places. I think that that's great.
All we can do is hope.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
I really, well, we can do a lot more than that, but you know what I mean, regarding a board that exists over in another province meant to just advise one news organizations. I hope it leads
Yeah.
to change. I really liked the way they defined who was eligible to be in the group, right? Because even just now, like we sometimes stumble with that. I think you just said like Black people and African descent people, but
Mhm.
the way it's defined, and I think it mentioned this more than once in the article, but it's 25 members who are African Nova Scotians and persons of African descent. So
Yeah.
I always talk about the umbrella, people from all over the world, the Caribbean, places in Canada, the States, Africa, literally Europe, coming from other places, and then multi-generational people from here. That does kind of at least summarize everyone in just two terms,
Yeah.
so African New Brunswickers and persons of African descent living in New Brunswick. Um,
Well, I
it's
certainly
just
think
well
it
worded.
speaks
Yeah.
it speaks to the fact that, like, if you look at their faces, certain
Hmm.
people might say that, like, certain of them do not necessarily look what we might attribute as African. They don't have a lot of melanin. There are a lot of people on that I might not see in the street and think that's a Black person. But it comes to a bigger argument of, like, and we've talked about this before, what are Black people, the language around biracial, multicultural, etc. Whereas this straight up just says, like, if you are a descendant of, or you are an African Nova Scotian, you can participate. So I
Exactly.
do think that that is great language. I also had this
Yeah.
conversation on Instagram recently because of the fact that they released more pictures of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's baby Lilibet, and
Hmm.
that is a white child with ginger hair, and it's sort of like a lot of people are sort of in the comments and making memes about, like, this is the baby everyone was worried was going to be Black and, like, overthrow the royal family and sort of like screw up their lineage, and like the kid does not look like it is of African descent. And so I talked about this recently, and the fact that, like, well, how do you even qualify this anymore? Like, I don't know, as we get more and more mixed generationally, culturally, it's all just, we're
Hmm.
all human. We're all just human.
Yep.
Yep.
All just part of that beige brown rainbow.
I'd like to be a different, can I just be like I want to be pink. I don't want to be beige brown. That sounds so boring.
There's no pink. Maybe sunburn. Sunburned. I guess there is
Ugh,
pink.
ugh.
Okay.
So technically.
I'm going to move on. Is that okay?
Of course.
Because let me bring up the screen here. Over in Fredericton, something
Mhm.
else was just announced. And that is in New Brunswick, a different task force recommended how Fredericton City Hall should combat racism. And so the people at City Hall have until June 30th, 2024 to present a formal response. Um, so Passionate Nkube, who is the chair of the city's anti-racism task force, and I think he had something to do with the mayor's campaign as well. I think he's been with her since day one. I'm actually gonna, just before I read this, open a separate article. I didn't know, pictured with. Oh, it is. So he's the chair of the anti-racism task force. But yeah, so a task force struck to investigate how Fredericton can combat racism is recommending that City Hall hire a new employee to track and report on incidents of racism. That employee would give residents of Fredericton an opportunity to talk to someone at City Hall about their experiences and also give counselors a person who can consistently report back to them on the prevalence and nature of racism, said Passionate Nkube, chair of the task force. The issue of racism and issues to do with racism aren't new. He said it's something that people have dealt with for many years, so they believe that if the city appoints someone specifically to address it, then it does further show or does show a commitment to combating racism. So that is just one recommendation out of more than 24 that the task force presented to councillors at Monday's general council meeting. I find it interesting that the news only reported on that one, and I wish there was a link to what the other 25 were. But Yusuf Shire, who is the president of the New Brunswick African Association, was involved with this as well. He's spoken publicly about racist incidents taking place in the area, and in fact, just this February, I had the opportunity to go up to Miramichi for a weekend workshop in which was probably related to this, in which there were many discussions from many different, groups of people of African descent, as well as New Brunswick African people who were there, having different panels and breakouts and creating lists, bringing up what the issues were, especially for immigrants and local people as well. So I believe that was part of this, but the task force just discovered that there is a need for more education, more awareness. There's challenges that need to be addressed in Fredericton. What I found interesting was that the mayor, Kate Rogers, called the task force eye-opening, and she guess part of her election campaign and getting elected was that she promised to help fight racism, and I guess this is the follow-through of that. They did have Ruth Breen, as if you're again watching on YouTube, you can see these images. She was a council appointed member on the task force. I wanted to point out that some of the recommendations the city has already started, which mostly had to do with police involvement. Just that the police already work with the Multicultural Association of Fredericton, have a close relationship with the Sitansiisk First Nations. I'm so sorry if I said that wrong. And that they've recently completed cultural competency training. So I guess maybe that's one out of the 25 that Ruth Breen said the city's already working on.
I found an article with more
I saw you looking
of the
down. I was hoping you were looking that up. So I want to know what your thoughts on this are. And also, can you send that to me on Messenger?
I super can. One momento. Um, dee-doo, be-doo, dee-doo. Here's our Jeopardy music as I hit send. But I can read some of them.
N-
The task
Yeah.
force is asking for police to keep better records of hate incidents, and to fund a new staff position to receive complaints. What else is in this article? It's a Telegraph Journal article. Um, it says that a lot of the turnover in the group is due to a lack of funding, that there's no financial commitment. There's a need for resources to support the recommendations. Race-based data gap is an issue for local police forces across the province. Local police forces across the province weren't collecting race-based data or were doing so inconsistently. Um, and Nkube said that they don't want their children to grow up being scared of policemen. While you pull that up, I will stop reading from it and I will say, honestly, like, I think that this is pivotal work and it's super important. Obviously, what we've talked a lot about has been around Manju Varma and the Commissioner of Systemic Racism's report, which this task force does seem to be asking for a lot of what has also been recommended by her. And I do
Mhm.
think that these recommendations need to be met. I do think that um, there should be somebody, like an employee to document all of these incidents. Um, just because if there's no way to collect the data, then there's no way to prove that there's systemic racism. And the first recommendation in Manju Varma's report was to basically educate the government on what systemic racism is. And I think we're still at a place where we need to be collecting data that isn't just anecdotal to prove that these things exist, because for some reason, some people still don't believe that these types of incidents are occurring. So I certainly hope that it does happen. And I do find it in a way a bit surprising that the mayor said that it was eye-opening, but at the same time, I think for her to say that it wasn't eye-opening while not maybe pushing for that work would probably also be seen as a problem as well. Um,
Yeah.
like, it'd be like, "You know what? I knew this racism exists the whole time, and I did nothing as mayor." So I think she sorta
Yeah.
has to say, "I was shocked as a white person to know that the N word is still being used." And this is a joke, this is not a quote. But I do think that, yeah, I hope that change does happen.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Oh no, Madhu Varma. Okay, I was gonna say that I was looking at some of the members of the task force, and it's
I
not
saw
Manju
that.
Varma. It's Madhu
I know, I'd like to know
Varma.
if they're related.
Interesting.
Like, I'm very interested if Manju and Madhu are somehow related to each other.
Yeah, and other than Yusuf Shire, I don't recognize the names on this list either. I wish there was nice clickable photos and little bios on all of these. Oh, Felix. Yeah, remember Felix. Actually, I remember Derek too. Okay, so I know some of these people. Um, this is great work. I know that these individuals would have put a lot of work into this, and there have been many reports on systemic racism created in the past. We know that there was the huge, I don't know how much money it cost, study with Vanju Marma, the commissioner's report on systemic racism. Before I go on, can you quickly tell me when that one was completed? Was that in 2023 as well? Was that this year? I am losing all
I
scope of
think it
time.
was I think it was 2022, the 86 recommendations, but I
Okay.
recently looked at it.
Over a
Hold on.
year ago, really? Because I know that in 2021 there was news about it, and I
If
don't
there's
know
no
when it
way it
was
was only
completed.
done this year. Is that how time works now?
Yeah, time is odd.
Hold on.
Um, so this is interesting while you look that up, that it was,
Mhm.
a funded report done on a
2022.
okay. Wow, wow, what is going on? That's been over a year, okay.
December. It's almost been a year.
So, it's wild that at no point during any of that did we even hear that there was a separate municipally funded study being done in the city of Fredericton. So we've got the provincial one, the municipal one, and, the thing is, this problem is, again, okay, what are we going to do with this information? Like, is anything going to be done with any of this information? Um, we know the problems, and I did kind of find it, I don't want to say amusing, but just like to say that it was an eye opener. I'm sure it was exciteful, and there was some more data that was collected, but it can't be really an eye opener. And if it is, that's problematic in itself. We regularly half joke that, other than Alberta, New Brunswick is probably traditionally or currently known as one of the most racist provinces in the country, and we always put Fredericton as the literal capital of that racism. Um, we need something to be done. Like, we need something to be done. It would be really interesting if Fredericton, if of all these recommendations, started collecting race-based data of incidents, because that is the one thing that I read that would really be landmark. It could be like setting a stage, setting an example for provinces and even Canada to do that, because as we know, and as we were reminded in 2020, um, there is not race-based data collected in Canada. And for those that argue that that is racist to collect that, it's not, because you cannot manage a situation if you don't understand the data surrounding how much it's happening. You cannot really address if there is a higher percentage of Black people being arrested by police or spot checked by police or declined mortgages or loans or anything, if you don't have the data, if you don't have the data of who is approving and who is being declined. In all of this, Fredericton, or my recommendation for you would be to find a way to collect race-based data on the things that the people are asking for.
I agree. I also I did know that there was that task force, but I didn't know that they were
Cool.
like gonna have recommendations. Hopefully something comes of all of this, but we will see. We will see.
And see, I knew there was going to be recommendations, but I didn't understand when I was in Miramichi that there was a fully government-funded task force. There is an organization in Moncton that has been pretty supportive of Black issues in the past year. What are they called? That I knew that they had sponsored that weekend. I'm not going to remember. They also built a community center in Moncton last year. But yeah, so that's the news. There
Cool.
is, there was Black Business Initiatives award ceremony. Hillary and I be in some magazines, keep him busy. There is a CBC really interesting Black advisory panel that had been created in Nova Scotia, and the Fredericton Racism Task Force have submitted their report with 25 recommendations that they believe the city needs to incorporate to help this fight towards equality. And I do like to stress that there are more cultures in Atlantic Canada and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia than just Black and white people. And so when funding like this is done, I do honestly feel it would be hard to consult with like 50 different countries and cultures. But I always, I want people of other cultures who are listening to this to know that I believe that any work that is done, any work to fight racism and fight inequality done by Black people, any money and funds that go into that pocket, I believe if progress is made, it works to help people of all colors and cultures. Like I don't want people to think like other groups don't matter. Like everyone matters in this fight towards equality. And so I hope if Black people are recommending changes and those changes are being listened to, that it serves to just fight racism against all people and break down the stereotypes and borders. Yeah. I don't know if you were going to say something, Hillary, but I think people, this is an episode to share your comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know what your feelings are on the things we discussed today.
I just wanted to say that we had a whole other topic.
Nah, we did?
Yeah, the Origins premiere, and I said it at the beginning, and it's in the banners on the side, and you're wrapping up.
I'm not wrapping up. I
But we
swore.
also
I
don't
I
have to,
thought.
because I am cognizant of the time and the
No, you
fact that
can.
we have
No,
a
no,
a
no.
meeting
Boop.
because
There
we're
it is.
busy.
I thought I
Okay.
had like zoned out, and I thought you had talked about it. I thought I even had brought it up on the screen for a bit and then took it away because I was like, I thought you had like worked it into your talk about just like the red carpet event and everything else. Okay. Not even close. We got time. Look, you see how dark it is around here? Like I'm half
Well,
asleep.
I'll make it brief. I had the distinct honor on Viola Desmond Day to go to the screening of Ava DuVernay's film Origins, which is based on a book by Isabel Wilkerson, which I've purchased this weekend. This is how moved I was by this movie. It changed my life. And it was just this mind-blowing idea, like, not that racism isn't real, but it sort of kept touching on the fact of like, how do we keep qualifying racism if we say that like being called the N-word is the same as being lynched, is the same as having crosses burnt on your lawn, because we're just using one word, where he's saying that all of it is racism with no tiers or categories or things to define it as better or worse than other experiences. Then
Mm-hmm.
the main character goes on to explore the idea of not what if it's not racism, and not trying to say that racism doesn't exist, but exploring the idea of caste, which I have spoken to you about, but I did not know this as a term. But the idea of just sort of like, who do you think you're better than, caste systems, and I guess like different types of oppression in communities that can exist. So you've got the main, I guess, idea of racism is that in racial classes, white people predominantly are portrayed as better, see themselves as better, or the systems in place put them in a category where they are better than black people and probably other races, but the main characters of this movie are black, and so it focused on black
Mm-hmm.
versus white racism. Then you learn, if you didn't already know, which you knew about, but I had not known about, the Dalits in India and how they are part of a caste system where Dalits are a group of Indian people that are viewed as lesser than other people in India. And this other caste system that seems to exist there, where Dalits clean human sewer systems and are just treated horribly actively today, just because of this sort of caste system and this idea that there are some people better than others. What I found to be like groundbreaking knowledge to me was a lot of this came around the idea that in this, now this is going to sort of touch on a lot of what's going on in the world right now, but they were talking about the Jews versus the Nazis, and the idea that black versus white slavery is not as bad as the Holocaust, because there were 6 million Jews that died. And then the main character sort of argues, given the length that slavery existed, the 400 years that this occurred and had ramifications, there is no number. Is it worse to have 6 million or an unknown number? And it's this whole fight scene in the movie, or like verbal argument over who sort of had it worse. And this idea that one is an eradication of a group of people versus using a group of people as a commodification and consumerism to bolster corporate capitalistic ideals. And so is it worse to erase a group of people or to turn them basically into a means of making money? And what then became super fascinating was that there's evidence that proves that the head Nazis and Adolf Hitler used the like Jim Crow era slavery as the blueprint to create the Holocaust and just tried to do it more efficiently and better. And I was blown away. And then it just continues to pull on your heartstrings over like, why do people perceive each other one as better than the other? Why do we have to hate each other to feel these types of ways? And I was just mind boggled. I was blown away. And of course, in all of these scenarios, they found a way to like romanticize, you know, a Jew and a normal and a German who are in love with each other, and then they get held up by Nazis, and then a black couple during the civil rights movement working with a white couple during the civil rights movement who have to pretend they don't know each other in common day. We're fighting for the rights of black people and to stop lynchings in the deep south. And I cried from the start to the end. People were trying to ask Ava DuVernay questions and they were heaving with sobs. Viola Desmond's family was there, and I am just blown away. Just shocked. Anyway, thank you for listening. Everyone go see this movie on January 19th, please.
That
Also,
really
Ava
sounds like a
DuVernay, if
movie
you're
worth
listening,
seeing.
come on the show. Go ahead.
Gotta reach out to her and invite her.
Well, she
That
responded to me posting on our page about it. She's in Black Atlantic's DMs. Ava, I'm coming for you.
nice, nice. Can't wait. Yeah, that's a lot. That that's the scope of that movie. Sounds very deep and wide, and it touches on a lot of important things that I feel um, people are going to have to go watch, including myself. I I don't really have anything to say about it other than I look forward to seeing it and to really understanding it better on my own. Um, you did mention the transatlantic slave trade and how many people died as a result of enduring that, and I'd heard about that before. I'd heard some different numbers, so I thought I'd
Mhm.
look it up quickly. And yeah, it's very vague. It says it's estimated at somewhere between 6 to 150 million people. Um, that died as a result of the 250 years direct of the transatlantic slave trade, like let alone people who died just trying to be captured and people who died on the boats that didn't even make
Mhm.
it to North America.
Mhm.
And the United Nations has that number sitting at their estimate of being about 17 million people, the death toll from the transatlantic slave trade. But
Yeah.
yeah, lots of interesting parallels to be drawn, and yeah, definitely, it's really shocking when you learn about like the playbooks that have been studied, right? So from the slave trade to Nazi to whatever your opinion is on what's going on in December of 2023, but playbooks being copied from events in the past.
Yeah,
But
that's it. It kinda
I
discusses that in the movie, but, like, obviously, this was made so long before what's been going on in the world right now, so everyone in the audience got, like, real quiet. Um,
okay,
but hey.
yeah. Well, I'm sorry for skipping that part because obviously that's something that people need to hear about, and yeah, just
No,
hearing you speak
everyone
about
go
it and your
see it.
passion, yeah, it's that's going to be a great movie. Well,
Um,
you and I do have a meeting to get to.
we're booked and busy, everybody. We
Busy,
have to
busy.
depart. Busy,
Thank you for
busy.
listening. Shout out to the people that made it to the end. Please click follow, like, subscribe. If you've never rated the show and you're on streaming platforms, please rate us. Um, yeah, yeah, it means the world. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
What else do you want to say?
Thanks for watching, everyone. No, that's it.
All right,
Crapberry Clinton Davis.
peace.
Peace.